Before we begin, if stories like this soothe your mind and slow your heartbeat after a long day, go ahead and gently tap that like button and maybe even subscribe. Only if you truly want more of these slow burn journeys. And tell me in the comments where you're listening from tonight. I'm always curious who else is drifting off to the past with me. Now, pull the blanket up to your chin, breathe out slowly, and let's begin our walk into a world where being born a woman was a gamble you didn't get to choose. Imagine this. You open your eyes, and darkness clings to the ceiling like cobwebs spun too thick. There's no glass window, no gentle dawn slipping in, just the thin grey blur of morning leaking through a thatched roof, heavy with old rain and frozen breath. You're not in a bed, not really. You're curled on a pile of straw that smells faintly of goat urine, tucked into a corner where the draft is only slightly less sharp. The tunic on your body is rough wool. It scratches the bends of your elbows and behind your knees, and it smells like you slept inside an old feed sack, which you basically did. Your skin sticks to it in places. Damp. Cold. You shift a little and something scurries under the mat. Probably one of the mice that's been gnawing on the end of yesterday's stale oatcake near your hip. You whisper a curse under your breath, but not too loud. You don't want to wake the boy yet. Coughing. You hear it anyway. Thin and raspy, from behind the crooked board nailed up as a wall. That's your son. He's 6 winters old, but already sounds like an old man when the cold gets into his chest. He's all bones and eyes, but he's alive, which, around here, is more than most can say. You sit up slowly, bones cracking like dry twigs, and feel for your shoes, if you can call them that. They're really just strips of old cloth wrapped around your feet and tied with leather cords. Still damp from yesterday's sludge. The hearth is cold. The ashes from last night sit in a sad heap, grey and useless. You'll need to relight the fire before your fingers go numb. But there's no firewood. You burned the last of it after dusk, just to keep the boy from shaking himself into a fever. What's left is a chip pot, some spoiled onions, and a few frostbitten carrots. You can't feel your toes. You can barely feel your breath leaving your lips. And it's only morning. A pot clangs behind you. Your own elbow hit it stupidly. The boy stirs, murmuring your name, or trying to. His voice is raw. There's no honey left, no herbs. The healer won't come unless you pay her. And what would you pay with? Your last, threadbare shawl. You rise to your knees and crawl to the hearth. With luck, there might still be embers under the ash. You blow gently, again. Nothing. Just dust. You reach for the tinder, and then stop. Outside the earth creaks. Bootsteps, muffled in the frost, but unmistakable. You freeze. The boy stops coughing. Then, a kick against the door, not hard but firm, deliberate. You stay still, breath caught in your chest. Another kick, a low grunt, a familiar one. Not him. Not again. Is he drunk already? Or worse, sober? You grab the ladle like it's a weapon. Your heart thumps not fast but heavy, dull. Dread has weight, and you know this one. You've worn it like a cloak before. He's back. But why now? And what does he want this time? He doesn't break the door. He doesn't need to. One kick is enough to remind you that he could. That's the kind of power he carries, not just in his arms, but in the way the whole village nods when he walks past. Not because they like him, but because they fear being noticed. You hold your breath as his silhouette fades. He spits in the dirt, then stumbles off, muttering something you can't quite catch. Your grip on the ladle eases, and your fingers sting from the cold air now that you're not moving. You wait another full minute before you exhale, deep and slow. The boy stirs again. He murmurs for water. You whisper back, brushing straw from your knees, and move toward the bucket in the corner. There's a film of ice on top, thin, glass-like. You crack it with your knuckles and pour a mouthful into a cracked clay bowl. He takes it with both hands and drinks like it's warm soup. When he's calm, you turn toward the hearth again. It's time. The work of women in this village begins long before the cock crows. Not that it ever really ends. There's no room for idleness when survival is measured in sacks of barley and reputation in whispers. Your days are shaped by men, and by the spaces you're not allowed to enter without them. Today, like every day, starts with obligation. Not to your son, not to your hunger, but to the church. You throw a shawl over your shoulders and step into the brittle morning. Your breath clouds in front of your face. Smoke curls from other chimneys already. Those with sons old enough to chop wood or husbands to threaten it into being done. You walk the narrow path past mud walls and timber beams toward the chapel. It's not grand, no stained glass, just a squat stone box with a cross hammered into the peak. But inside, behind the chill and the rot of wet boots, there's God, or so they say. You enter quietly, kneel where you always do, behind the last row. Women don't sit in front. You lower your head, not just out of reverence, but because you're being watched, not by God, but by the priest. Father Arnulf is younger than you'd expect. His hair still thick, his eyes sharp, too sharp. His sermons are about obedience. His hands are cleaner than most. His smile, always slightly too long. He speaks now of Eve, of her fall, of yours, of how woman brought ruin to man, and how only silence, humility, and childbearing can cleanse her wicked nature. The usual morning balm. Your knees ache, but you don't shift. That would be noticed. You listen, nod. You repeat the Latin you were taught phonetically, not knowing what most of it means. But you know the rhythm, and the rhythm is what matters. Then comes the list. Names of women who've sinned. Real ones. Whispered confessions turned public warnings. One stole bread. Another showed her ankles. A girl, just 13, laughed at the baker's son. Now she's watched. You're not on the list today, but you've been. Twice. The first, after your husband's funeral, when you came to ask about widow's support. You asked too loudly. The second, when your child had a fever and you tried herbs before coming to the church. The priest smelled the dried roots. He made you kneel longer the next day. So now you smile, quietly. You whisper your penance. You accept. Always accept. Back outside, the sky has lifted a little, from slate to dirty wool. A few chickens peck at the frozen earth. A man rides past on horseback, leather-clad, face like stone. He doesn't look at you. He wouldn't need to. You don't exist in his world unless he says so. At home, you begin the chores, scraping frost from the inside of the door, shaking out the straw, checking for mice in the grain. Your fingers go numb. You wrap cloth around them and keep moving. Later, the boy tries to help, but he coughs again. Deep, wet. You tell him to stay wrapped. You add onion skins to boiling water. It's not medicine, but it smells warm. You watch him sip, eyes half closed. You think of the healer, the one in the woods. But she's been called a witch. Last winter, they tied her hands behind her back and dunked her in the river. She lived, which meant she was guilty. She disappeared after that. You don't dare go near her hut anymore. Instead, you pray. You pray with a face made of wax, hands pressed so tightly they leave ridges in your skin. And then you remember, today's market day. You'll have to go. With the boy, alone, you wipe the bowl, fold the shawl, and ask yourself what kind of strength a woman is expected to carry, when even God seems to speak through the mouths of men. Because today again you will walk past him. Again you will be seen. And this time, what if he stops you? He stops you with one hand. Not a shove. Not a blow. Just fingers curling around your wrist, like you're a pitcher someone's forgotten to return. You twist a little, but his grip tightens, not in pain, but in certainty. It takes you half a second too long to recognize him. The shaved head, the narrow jaw, the stain on his robe's hem, always the same shape, always smelling faintly of broth. Of course, the monk from the monastery kitchen, the one who delivers loaves once a week and stays too long talking to girls at the well, the one who never seems in a rush to return to God. He smiles like nothing's wrong, as if your heartbeat isn't tripping over itself in your chest, as if you're not standing ankle deep in a slurry of slop and melting snow, gripping a basket that still smells faintly of cabbage. You drop something, he says. You look down. You didn't. He leans in anyway. Not your basket, your smile. You stare. Not because you're surprised, but because there's no safe response to this. You pull your hand back, gently, firmly, just enough to say no, not enough to start a scene. He lets go, sort of. His fingers trail just a moment too long, like he's leaving behind an intention. You walk on. You don't look back. Mud clings to your wrappings. The cloth shifts with every step, rubbing your ankle raw. You pull your shawl closer and lower your eyes. It's easier that way. Fewer invitations. The main path is barely wide enough for a cart, and this morning the carts are already out. One lurches past, wheels splashing brownish ice onto your hem. You don't flinch. You can't afford the distraction. Behind you, the murmur of men grows louder. You smell them before you see them. Smoke, sweat, and the sharp tang of cheap ale. The tavern emptied early today. At the edge of the market, you slow down. Not because you want to, but because you have to. The stalls are crowded. Voices overlap, bartering, mocking, barking orders. The butcher slaps his table with a cleaver. The baker's boy swats birds away from the crusts. A pair of soldiers laugh over a roasted leg, tearing it with their teeth like wolves. You step aside to let a group of children run past. One of them trips and scrapes her knee, but no one stops. You hesitate, then keep moving. There's nothing you could offer that wouldn't be turned against you. Your spot is by the barrel maker's wife. She's already set up. Turnips today, and a row of pickled something in jars that probably isn't quite fresh. She nods without warmth. You lay out your goods, 6 eggs, 2 threadbare cloths, and a twist of dried herbs that you pray still smell like something useful. No one rushes to your stall. You call out softly, fresh hen's eggs. A man walks past, stops, doubles back. He looks at the eggs, then at you, then smiles. You brace. Bit old for a hen, aren't you? It's meant as a joke, but it lands like a brick. You don't reply. You lower your head and tuck your hands behind your back. He laughs, as if that's permission to continue. Don't look so sour. Might curdle the yolks. He walks away. You exhale. The butcher waves you over. You obey. Always obey. He holds up a slab of meat, eyes you, then the eggs. 2 for this. It's robbery. You hesitate. He drops the meat back. 1 then. You nod. Hand him 1 egg. He tosses the cut into your basket without wrapping. Blood seeps into the cloth. You tell yourself it's fine. At least there's meat. As you turn back, someone steps in your way. Not roughly, but directly. You look up, and your stomach drops, because it's him again, the monk. Only this time, he's not smiling. His face is quiet, calm, but his hand moves slowly, to your shawl, not to touch it, but to lift the edge. And underneath, tucked near your collar, is the cord you wear hidden, your husband's old token. He fingers it gently. You still wear it. You don't speak. He leans close. Doesn't suit you. Widowhood makes a woman lonely. Your throat tightens. He tilts his head. Come by the kitchen later. I'll find something better for your boy's cough. You don't agree, but you don't say no. He walks off. You feel the mud sucking at your feet again. Only now it's not the ground that's heavy. You pack the rest of your things. The market isn't over, but your breath is thin, your hands shaking. You look up once more, and your gaze lands on your daughter. She's near the weaver's tent, laughing, talking to someone. But then, someone grabs her braid. Not hard, not violently, just enough to make her spin. And when she turns, you recognize the man holding her hair. He wasn't always cruel. At least, not with his hands. But cruelty wears many robes, and his came stitched in red thread, fringed with verses. You remember that winter as a hollow sound. Soft, padded silence, broken only by the wind clawing at the shutters. Your husband's body still warm in the bed when the priest came to bless him. Your child asleep, wrapped in a woolen bundle, not yet knowing he'd been born into widowhood. Back then, you thought grief would be your greatest burden. But grief doesn't eat, doesn't shiver, doesn't leave the hearth cold or the belly hollow. By the third day, your larder was bare. By the seventh, your hands cracked from hauling water alone. And by the 10th, you stood in front of Father Arnulf, clutching your shawl like a shield, asking for work. He looked at you with the same expression he wore during sermons, serene, but sharpened at the edges. He said the parish couldn't afford charity, that the monastery already had mouths to feed, that your husband had left behind debts, not blessings. You begged. He nodded, then offered a different kind of help. A room near the abbey wall, a cot, a quiet corner where you could scrub linens and clean chamber pots. And once a week, a visit, not for inspection, for atonement. Because even then, even when your fingers bled from washing, you still had a body, still had skin. And to a man like him, that meant you owed. It wasn't violent. It didn't need to be. He prayed before. He prayed after. He said your suffering cleansed you, said it honored your husband's soul. You stopped asking questions. You stopped counting nights. Eventually, the swell beneath your belly answered for you. You didn't speak of it. Not to the midwife who still sold herbs behind the mill. Not to the widow who loaned you salt. Not even to your sister, though she surely suspected. You buried the secret in your hands, your spine, your breath, until the night it came, silent and fast like a thief. You bit the cloth between your teeth. You bled into the straw. And when it was done, you wrapped the child in your husband's old tunic and whispered his name as if that alone would keep him safe. But no baptism followed. No cradle carved. Just quiet. The priest never asked. He didn't need to. You worked harder after that. Walked slower. Kept your hair covered, your head down. You said yes when told, and never again begged for help, because now you knew help has a cost, and your body, your only currency, was dangerously close to spent. But winter passed. The snow retreated, leaving behind rot and possibility. And one day, your son called you mother in a voice stronger than before. His cough eased, his limbs steadied, and for a flicker, a breath, a pause in the sky, you felt whole again. Not happy, not free, but anchored. You still wear the same shawl, the one with the stitched hem, the one he tugged the day he named your desperation as invitation. Sometimes the wool itches. But you don't take it off, because it's the only thing that still feels like armor. And as you glance across the marketplace now and see your daughter being pulled by her braid, her voice too small to object, your steps too far to reach, you remember, at what age did the world first look at you and see not a child, but a woman? You don't run. That would make it worse. You walk fast, basket in one hand, skirts gathered in the other, your breath sharp in your throat like the bite of smoke. You push past barrels, stale bread carts, and piles of limp greens until your eyes find her, your daughter. Her braid is looped around a meaty hand, her face flushed from surprise, not pain, yet. She's looking up at him, confused, half laughing the way children do when they don't know what the moment is yet. But you know. You've seen that look before. Not on her face, on his. He's one of the tanners. Dark apron, burnt fingertips, the permanent scent of lye and rot hanging on his skin. He grins at her like she's a squirrel he might keep. His other hand gestures toward a tray of wooden toys. Carved horses, a spinning top, a whistle, a lure. You call her name. Once, clear. She turns. Relief floods her face. She wriggles out of his grip and runs to you, arms wrapping your waist with the force only fear gives children. The tanner shrugs. Didn't know she was yours, he says. Then he adds, with a smirk, she'll be of marrying age soon enough. You don't answer, because there's no answer that won't cost you. You turn, one arm around your daughter, and pull her back towards your stall. The crowd feels thicker now. More eyes, more elbows. You settle her on a crate and tell her not to move. Your basket is lighter than you hoped. 2 eggs left. The rest traded for a knuckle of salted meat that might be more sinew than flesh. The herbs, unsold. The cloth, glanced at, dismissed. You offer the eggs again. A woman pauses, lifts one, sniffs it like you'd offered her a bouquet. Too old, she mutters. A boy grabs the second and runs. You yell, too late. Your hand falls to your side. You close your eyes for a second longer than needed, just to breathe. Then you try again. Fresh herbs for colds, for... A shout interrupts you. You! The butcher again. This time, waving a strip of gristle and bone. You cheated me. Your chest tightens. I gave you good meat, you say softly. He steps forward. It smelled. My dog won't eat it. People are watching now. He tosses the gristle into your basket. It lands with a wet slap. You don't raise your voice. You bow your head. Because you've seen what happens when women argue in public. When voices rise. When tone becomes opinion, becomes crime. Once, a girl from the next village shouted at a man who tried to pinch her in the tavern. He called it disrespect, said she mocked him. The magistrate fined her family 2 hens and half a piglet. You can't afford that, so you pick up the gristle, you set it aside, and you lower your eyes. Nearby, your daughter has started to hum, quietly, a child's tune. Her legs swing gently from the crate. You smile at her without meaning to, even now, even after all of it, because her hair catches the sunlight, and for a second, you remember a time when you sat just like that, at your mother's feet, threading clover stems into circles and pretending they were crowns. That memory alone is worth enduring the morning, but the moment ends too quickly. Another merchant calls to you. You, woman, I'll take the herbs. You lift the bundle, step toward him. He sniffs them. Stale. You watered these. I didn't. He holds up a coin. You reach for it. He pulls it back. Smile first. Your hand stops midair. He waits. The moment stretches. Your cheeks burn. You smile. Barely. He tosses the coin. You catch it. The herbs land hard on his table. He doesn't look back. You clutch the coin tightly. You'll need it for salt. Maybe even a sliver of soap, if the woman at the well still has any left. As you turn back toward your daughter, she's gone. The crate is empty. You drop the basket. You scan the crowd. And there, at the far end of the row, you see her braid again in someone's hand. But this time, she's being pulled. You catch her just in time. 2 steps, and you're there. Your hand finds her shoulder. Not hard, not rushed, but enough to say now is not the time to smile. She looks up at you, her eyes still wide, still unsure if she did something wrong. She hasn't learned yet that in places like this, being visible is always a risk. The man lets go of her braid. I wasn't hurting her. You nod, because denying it would be defiance, and defiance has a price. She slips behind you, fingers clutching the edge of your skirt. You guide her back to your stall, heart still beating in your throat like a second pulse. She's 9, almost 10. In this village, that means she's no longer a child. Not in the way she believes, not in the way men look at her. Somewhere between her last milk tooth and her first period, the world started seeing her as a future wife. Or worse, someone else's entertainment. You remember when you first bled. You were just 12. Your mother gave you a cloth, a warning, and a look that said, "Don't speak of this again." And you didn't. Not when the cramps curled your spine. Not when the blood wouldn't stop on the 2nd month. Not when the baker's son called you woman, in a voice too old for his face. You learned to stay quiet. Now, so must she. She tugs at your sleeve. "Mama, I don't like the man with the brown apron." You kneel in front of her, wipe a smudge of soot from her cheek. "Then stay by me. Don't wander." She nods, doesn't blink. You can see she understands the surface of what you mean, but not the depth. Not yet. Not until someone grabs harder, or longer, or doesn't let go. Later, as the market thins and clouds draw low, you walk back home together. She skips at first, then slows when your hand tightens. She asks, "Can I go to the Abbey school like Thomas?" You shake your head. Why not? Because the Abbey only teaches boys. Because letters and Latin are not for girls. Because ink and parchment cost more than cheese. And because no priest wants a girl learning the names of saints she's not allowed to imitate. You tell her gently, "Because you help me here." She doesn't argue. She knows better. That evening, you comb her hair. It takes time. Lice don't go away easily, and soap is something you use sparingly. You separate each strand with your fingers, picking, twisting, braiding. Her scalp is tender. She winces once, then stays still. You check her belly too. The worms are still there. You can tell. The midwife gave you a salve 2 months ago, but it ran out. You tried herbs, tried broth, but you know, what really helps is warmth, meat, and privacy. All luxuries you can't afford. Still, she sleeps beside you. Warmth enough to share. That night, she whispers, "Mama, I had blood today." You freeze. Not because you didn't expect it, but because you'd hoped for more time. You pull her close. She trembles just slightly. "Does that mean I'm grown?" Your voice is slow. Software number. "It means you'll have to be careful." She nods and doesn't ask what that means. You teach her to fold cloth into layers, to walk with her arms crossed, to stay out of sight when drunk men pass. You teach her to speak less, to breathe through her nose, not her mouth when afraid. You teach her to erase herself gently, the same way your mother did with you. And as she sleeps that night, curled like a question beside your hip, you lie awake, listening, waiting, because soon the night will end, and morning will come, and with it, the knock. You don't remember when the ache in your back started, only that it's been there longer than most people have stayed in your life. With every step, the basket pulls heavier, not from its weight, there's little inside, but from the stretch in your arms, the slow sinking of your breath. The village is quieter now. The market has thinned, but the road home still clings to your boots like thick soup, and every patch of earth is either frozen or churned into ruts. By the time you reach your hut, the sun has dipped behind the roof line. The light is silver now, and sharp. It catches on the frost lining the fence post and the nails in your door. But it's not the cold that makes you stop. It's the voices. 2 men. Loud, familiar. The slurred edges of their words carry that softness that only drink brings. And bravado. You tighten your grip on the basket's handle and round the corner slowly. They're leaning against your door like they own it. One holds a jug, the other chews something. Maybe bread, maybe nothing at all. They turn when they hear your steps, not fast, just enough to let you know you're expected. "Evening," says the older one. He's missing a tooth. His eyes shine. "We thought we'd drop by." You nod once, not a greeting, a habit. "We came to discuss your field," says the second, who's broader and has a better coat. "You've not been tending it properly." Your field, the one behind your hut, a patch of earth barely large enough to grow beets, but still, it's land, and land is worth something, even if you're not. "I work it when I can." "Not well enough," he says. You open your mouth, but he raises a hand. "Don't start, girl. The elders agreed. You can keep it through winter, but after that, it's mine." You feel your jaw tighten, not in defiance, in calculation. What would it cost to protest? He continues. "Of course, we're not heartless. You're a hard worker, pretty face. We thought we'd have supper together, a warm fire, some broth." You glance past them. The door is ajar. Number. You didn't leave it that way. You shift the basket to your left arm and step forward. "I have a child sleeping." The older man laughs. "Then we'll be quiet." You breathe slowly. Count 1, 2, 3. But before you can speak again, he pushes the door open with his foot. The hinges groan. Your breath catches. Because you know the inside is not ready. There's no defense, no dignity. Just your daughter, her hair loose, curled by the hearth with a crust of bread, and her small doll made of rags and string. She looks up as the men step in. You move fast, faster than your spine allows. The basket drops. Your hands catch her shoulders, and you guide her back behind the stove, into the shadow between fire and wall. "Stay here," you whisper. She doesn't speak. She knows. The men don't look at her again, at least not yet. They stomp their boots clean, uninvited, and make themselves at home. One squats by the fire and holds out his hand. The other lifts the pot's lid and sniffs. "Smells like onion." It is. "You got meat?" "No." A grunt. You stand, spine straight, between them and the dark corner. The man with the better coat leans back and kicks at a stool. "Sit with us." You don't move. "I said..." The knock cuts him off. 3 sharp taps on the door frame. All heads turn. Another man steps in. You recognize the shape, but your heart doesn't settle, because it's not help. It's him, the one with the robe, the one from the church, and the look in his eyes tells you he didn't come to pray. You don't scream when he enters. You don't even flinch, because this isn't the first time men have crossed your threshold uninvited. And it's not the first time you've stood still to protect something you couldn't fight for directly. The priest steps in like he's stepping into his own parlor. He nods at the 2 others who lower their voices and clear a space for him near the fire. The room shifts without command. Everyone makes way for the man who speaks for God. He doesn't sit. He looks at you instead, then past you to where the edge of your daughter's dress is just visible behind the stove. His lips barely move, but you see the shape of his thoughts. He knows. Of course he does. He turns back toward you. We were discussing your land. You say nothing. You've let it go wild. You keep your voice level. I've tended it as I could. With no husband. You say nothing again. He glances at the meatless pot on the hearth, then at the stain on the floor from the last leak in the roof, then back at you. I've spoken with the elders, he says. They agree. It's not good for a woman to live alone. You should move in with family. You don't have any. You should remarry. You're not allowed to choose. Or perhaps, he adds, enter service at the abbey. There are places for women of modest means. You know what that means. Washing, cleaning, scraping wax off stone with frozen hands, and visits weekly from men who believe proximity to God grants them jurisdiction over skin. You shift your weight. The basket at your feet creaks. He steps closer. Do you understand what's best for you? You nod, because that's the only safe answer. He turns to the others. Let her rest. She'll prey on it. They grunt. One swigs from the jug. The other glances again at the pot. The priest gives you a small, polished smile. And remember, obedience brings mercy. Resistance invites judgment. Then he's gone. The others follow. You bolt the door behind them, but not because it will hold, because it's the only thing you can still close. Later that night, you sit with your daughter near the embers. The light is low. The room is quiet. She hums a tune with no words, one she learned before she could speak. And you think of Marta, your neighbor, a woman with 6 children and a husband who beat her whenever the wind turned. She came to the church once, blackened cheek, trembling hands. She asked for protection. The next morning, they found her in the river. No one searched for the truth. They called it repentance. They said she had demons. They buried her without a priest. Her husband remarried by harvest. You think of that river often, of how deep it runs in spring, of how still it seems in winter. You wonder if she stepped in alone, or if someone helped her, or if she never stepped at all. You'll never know, because justice here wears boots, and it doesn't stop for women, even if they scream, especially if they do. Now, all you have is silence, and a woman who lives 3 fields down, an old one, crooked-backed, fingers always stained with herbs. She helped you once, when your daughter was born. No one knew, but lately, people talk, say she mutters to herself, say her garden grows too fast, say she once healed a cow by whispering, say she's dangerous. They've started calling her things that end in fire, but she's the only one who's ever asked how you're really doing. You wonder, briefly, what would they call you if you still spoke your mind? You wait longer than necessary, even after the door closes, even after the footsteps fade. You wait, spine pressed against rough wood, hand still on the latch, as if your stillness might convince the world you're not there. Beside the hearth, your daughter is quiet. Her doll lies in her lap, face turned away, as if it too has learned when not to watch. You sit down slowly. The fire has dwindled to coals. The room has gone from golden to grey. Ash settles like dust on everything, even thought. The silence isn't peaceful. It presses in. Outside, the wind picks up. It slips between the cracks in the shutters, hums under the doorframe. You pull your shawl tighter. The air smells like smoke, frost, and something older. the scent of stone that's soaked in stories too heavy to carry. She whispers finally, "Are they gone?" You nod. For now. She doesn't ask what they wanted. You're grateful. Some questions shouldn't be answered aloud. Instead, she leans against you. You feel her breath, small and steady. The rhythm of a child who still believes that if she's close enough to you, nothing bad will happen. You want to believe it too. You remember your mother's words. Silence will keep you safe. You believed her then, until the night silence didn't help, until the bruise bloomed anyway, until the knock turned into a shove, until the promise turned into a price. But now, with your daughter's hair brushing your arm, you repeat the lesson, softly. Be still, be quiet, and it will pass. She nods, and you hate yourself a little, because what else can you teach her? You feed the fire, a twig here, a splinter there, just enough to keep it breathing. You don't want light, just warmth. The room glows faintly. You glance around. The pot, empty. The baskets, stacked. The door, barred. The window, shuttered. Everything where it should be, except your heartbeat. That still wanders. You whisper a prayer. Not the ones from church. Not in Latin. Something older. Something half remembered from the woman with the crooked back and the bundle of herbs tied in red thread. Something about protection. Something about holding on. The wind knocks once against the shutters. Then again. You close your eyes. Count to 7. Listen for hooves, for boots, for chains. Nothing. You let your breath out. She's already asleep. You settle beside her, bones groaning, arms wrapped around her. The straw beneath you is thin, but familiar. The warmth between you, fragile, but real. You begin to drift. The world outside stays quiet, for now. Then, footsteps, not outside, inside. The floor creaks. You sit up, eyes adjusting. The coals cast just enough light to see the far corner of the room. Nothing. You rise, slowly, step by step, barefoot. Cold floor. One plank at a time. You listen. Then, another step. Behind you, too late. You turn. And a hand grabs your hair. The grip on your hair loosens. You stumble forward, hands scraping the floor, breath caught somewhere between your ribs and your throat. The sound of the door slamming echoes, then fades. And once again, you're alone. Almost. Your daughter stirs, murmurs something soft, and you whisper back, "Sleep." She doesn't wake. The fire's gone out. You sit there for a long time, legs folded, spine curved like a question you're too tired to ask. Your scalp stings, not from force, from memory. Your body holds onto fear longer than bruises do. You wrap your arms around yourself, not for warmth, for ownership. But even that feels borrowed. You think of Annika. She was 15 when she died, her third child in 5 years. The labor took 3 days. The child was stillborn. The next morning, so was she. They said her soul was unclean, that the bleeding was a punishment for sins she wouldn't confess. But you saw her. You saw her belly torn, her thighs soaked. The shroud wouldn't stay white, and no one called for help because the help didn't exist. Not anymore. Once, there were women who knew how to ease the pain, who used oil and herbs, who whispered old names over water and laid hands gently over bellies too tight with fear. But the church called them heretics. Midwives became witches. Witches became ash. Now, birth is a gamble, and a woman's body, the table it's played on. You remember your own births, how the first child came fast, with water and prayer and salt packed beneath your tongue. How the second tore through you like fire. How you bled silently for 3 days, chewing dry bread just to stay awake, afraid to sleep in case you didn't wake up again. There was no healer, only linen strips, a rusted knife, and a whispered psalm. You don't know how you lived. Maybe the child's grip on your finger, maybe sheer stupid will, but you lived, and that meant doing it again. No one asked if you wanted more. Desire was never part of it. Not in your world. A man's want was law, a woman's no. A flicker of dust in a wind that doesn't pause. And contraception, a sin, a death sentence, not of body, of soul. You knew a girl once who swallowed pennyroyal leaves. Not many, just enough to make her sweat and shiver and sleep too deeply. She didn't wake. The priest said it was punishment for pride. The village said nothing. Now, when women speak of not yet or no more, they do it in whispers, behind doors, in cellars, with hands held tightly and eyes scanning corners. Some use herbs, if they're lucky enough to know someone still brave enough to grow them. You've only used them once, just a few drops in a drink, enough to delay the risk. It worked, maybe. You still carry the guilt, not for sin, but for surviving, because surviving means staying open, staying quiet, staying ready. You shift your weight and feel the ache in your hips. Old pain, familiar. It wakes with the cold and with memories. You touch your belly, not because you expect anything, but because it's still yours, for now. And you whisper to yourself, not a prayer, not quite, just a sentence, soft, like a lullaby. This body is mine, even if no one else believes it. You don't remember standing up, only that your fingers find something solid, a stool, a pot, a wall, and suddenly you're not on the floor anymore. The weight of your hair swings behind you. The room is spinning gently. Your breath tastes like metal, but you move because something inside you, a quiet, coiled thing, decides this is the line. You reach for the man's wrist first. It surprises him. That matters. He laughs. Easy now. But you're not listening. You twist. Not hard, not fast, just right. Your knee catches his thigh. He stumbles backward. His boot scrapes across the floor. You shove with your whole body. Not because you're strong, but because you're desperate. And desperation is heavy. The door hits the wall. He swears, catches himself on the frame, and glares at you. Not angry, not even surprised, just annoyed, like a man denied stew. You slam the door, you slide the bolt. Your palms sting, your lip is bleeding. You can taste it now. He doesn't knock, he walks away. You stand there shaking, then you fall to your knees, not from weakness, but because your daughter is already there, her arms wrapped around your waist, her face pressed to your ribs. You hold her, tight. She doesn't ask. She just breathes. You stay like that for a while. Long enough for your legs to ache and your knees to numb. Long enough for the room to cool, for the coals to settle into silence. Then slowly, you rise. You check the latch, the shutters. You draw what curtain there is across the window. You light the stub of a candle. The room becomes soft again. You wipe your face with a cloth. Rinse your mouth with stale water. Change your tunic. Braid your hair. Not because it matters, but because you need something to do with your hands. She sits nearby, watching, quiet, and for a moment, just one. You feel clean, not in the body, but deeper. Like you've stepped out of a shadow you didn't know was cast. You're not free, not safe, not stronger, but you moved, and he left, and that is something. You hold your daughter's hand. She leans into your side. You whisper, "We will be all right." She nods, and for once, you believe yourself. Then, 3 knocks, not rushed, not loud, but certain. You freeze. You know that rhythm. You've heard it in the chapel, the priest, and this time, he's seen everything. You don't open the door, you just unlock it. A small, cold motion. By the time you sit down again, your hands are in your lap, and the priest is already inside. He doesn't knock a second time. He never does. He closes the door softly, not like the others, not with force or noise, just with the quiet confidence of someone who knows they'll be heard. His robe rustles. He doesn't look at your daughter. That's worse somehow. You lower your eyes, not in reverence, in calculation. He waits a moment. Then, I saw what happened. You nod. I know the man. He's unclean. Another pause. But so is temptation. You don't speak. He moves to the fire, squats there, warming his hands like it's his home. You've lived alone too long. You nod again. Nothing to contradict. And you've taken company. It's not a question. You lift your head slowly. I never invited him. He smiles at the flame. But you didn't resist him either. Not quickly enough. Not clearly enough. Some would say that's consent. You clench your teeth. Lightly. Just enough to keep your voice soft. I said no. He sighs. Of course. You feel it coming. The shift. Like cold air before a storm. He stands and walks toward you. Not fast, not close. Just to loom. You know, he says, I could report this. To the council. To the bishop. Your throat tightens. They take impurity seriously. Even suspicion. You nod once. Slowly. Or, he adds, we can resolve this in the parish. Quietly. Cleanly. He lets the words sit. You've heard this before. Not in tone. In structure. The shape of what's coming is familiar, even if the words are new. I've spoken to the abbot, he says. There's a vacancy. Someone to tend the linens. Light the candles. Serve in humility. He steps a little closer. You would have a roof, meals, protection. And then, the final thread. In return, he says, you confess. You give yourself over, fully. The room stills. The fire cracks. The air smells of ash and wool and something bitter, like dried sweat and candle smoke. You look at him. You see his boots, his belt, his silence. You know what's not being said. You know what it will cost. Your daughter breathes behind you. Asleep again, maybe. Maybe not. He waits. You don't answer. Instead, you rise. Slowly. Knees stiff. Shoulders heavy. You walk to the hearth. Pick up the pot. Pour out the rest of the water. Just to do something with your hands. I'll pray on it, you say. He smiles again. As you should. He leaves without another word. You bolt the door. And then you scrub your hands over and over with cold water and an old cloth. Because nothing in this house belongs to you except your silence and your answer. Not today. You light the candle with a trembling match. The wick spits once, then settles. Wax runs quickly in this cold. You watch it drip, one slow line down the brass stem, and for a moment, that's all the world is. Light, heat, silence. The chapel is nearly empty. The stone walls sweat. The air smells of old lichen, wet ash, and a touch of iron. Like someone once bled here and time didn't forget. You kneel on the hard bench. Splinters press into your knees. Your skirt is thin. The fabric has worn away in the places your body bends most often. You fold your hands, not out of habit, out of necessity. The flame flickers. The shadows behind the altar tremble with it, like echoes of saints too tired to answer. You close your eyes and whisper the only prayer you know. Tell me who I am. Are you a sinner? A vessel of weakness? A test failed too many times? Or are you simply a woman? Hungry, tired, frightened, human? You don't know. No one teaches you that kind of doctrine. You were taught rules, silence, consequence. You were taught that obedience is holy and endurance is feminine. You were told suffering makes you pure, but you've bled enough to be a relic. You breathe deeper. Your fingers, still red from scrubbing, twitch slightly. You think of the priest's words, his smile that didn't reach his eyes, his threat wrapped in silk, the word protection, like a bribe, the word confession, like a verdict. You lower your head further, and you ask again, who am I? No answer, only the sound of a shutter creaking somewhere, a loose hinge, the moan of wood tired of holding things together. Then, footsteps. You don't look. You know who it is. His robes don't rustle much, but his breath does. You hear it catch once before he speaks. Grace, he says softly. You keep your hands folded. You want it. I can offer it. You feel him behind you, not close, not touching, but present, like the memory of a fever. It's not just your body they question, he continues. It's your soul. You say nothing. The people talk. They always do. I can stop them. I can clear your name. You keep your head bowed, but there must be honesty, a giving over, a surrender. You clench your fingers hard. The Lord forgives the humble. His breath is closer now. You feel it, warm, sour, certain. You open your eyes, but don't lift your head. The candle flickers again, and he says, almost gently, say yes, and I will protect everything you love. You close the chapel door behind you. It groans like an old secret, then clicks into silence. The wind outside carries the smell of wood smoke and old wool, the scent of winter clinging to the bones of spring. You walk slowly. Each footstep presses into soft, damp earth. The village is almost still. Only the occasional whimper of a dog or the flap of a shutter not tied tight. Your body aches again. But it's not the pain that slows you. It's the weight of memory. You see her face clearly now. Katarzyna, the neighbor with the clever hands. She could stitch anything. Once, she mended a sleeve so finely you couldn't see the tear. She was quiet, but not timid. Laughed like someone who still had teeth in the fight. She had a daughter too, younger than yours, wild hair, always running. One day, they were gone. No warning, no goodbye, just gone. At first the whispers said they'd gone to her brother's farm, north of the river. Then someone said she'd married again, a widower with land. Then another voice said she worked in a laundry house for coin, in the town. By the third week, they were all calling her a woman without shame. No virtue, no father for the child, no respect. Even the baker's wife said she should have prayed more. But you remember how Katarzyna looked the night before she left. You saw her by the well, her sleeves rolled, a welt on her wrist, mud on her hem. She held her daughter close, so close, kissed her temple like she was memorizing the shape of her skull, and her eyes, not frightened, not even sad, resolved. You didn't ask where she was going. You only said, if you need rope, I have some. She smiled, soft and sharp. I'll need shoes more. And then she was gone. Now, weeks later, you stand in the cold and wonder. Was it escape? Or was it just another kind of cage? A different kind of silence, paid in smaller coins? You'll never know. But a piece of you, the one that dreams quietly when your daughter is sleeping, that part wants to believe Katarzyna walks through town with her chin up, carrying clean linen that belongs to her, not some man with a grudge and a god. You imagine her standing near hot water, steam rising around her like absolution, her daughter nearby, laughing again. You whisper to the wind, I hope she's warm. Because warmth, not freedom, is the first thing you lose. And tonight, you feel both further away than ever. But something has shifted. You look down the road. You trace the same path she might have taken. And for the first time in months, you consider walking. You don't expect your name, but you come anyway. The village square smells of ash and thawing earth. A pit smoulders in the centre. The air carries wood smoke, cooked onions, and something older, burnt wool perhaps, or pride. People gather slowly, shawls drawn tight, eyes darting. You keep to the edge, your daughter's hand in yours. Her grip is loose. She doesn't understand yet. Not fully. The Gleshatai steps forward. His boots thud on the raised platform. He wears the red sash, borrowed from the chapel for such occasions. He coughs once, clears his throat, and unrolls the parchment. It crackles, like dry skin. You feel the hush before he speaks. A ripple of silence that spreads in waves. Then his voice. By order of the council and the blessing of the church. You breathe in. We name those whose debts are uncollected, whose tithes are unpaid, whose households lack. Protection. Protection. You know the word. You've heard it often, wrapped in sermons, whispers, offers. And now, accusations. The first name is a man, absent 3 months. Owes for sheep he never owned. The second, an old widow. Eyes gone white, ears gone dull. She lost her land to frost. The third, your name. Spoken clear, slow, no title. No daughter of, no wife of, just you. A single word that lands like a hammer. You feel heads turn, but you don't look. You stare at the speaker's boots. They're worn at the edges, stained from walking too many miles between other people's misfortunes. He continues, you have no male guardian, no registered labour, no tithe in 3 seasons, no recorded confession. 1 child, unlegitimated, no dowry. Each word is a drop of ink on skin, permanent. He lifts the final scroll. You see the wax, the red seal, the mark of the elder priest. And he says, you are hereby marked for withdrawal of village rights. If no correction is made, or no protector named, you shall vacate your dwelling by the next full moon. The wind doesn't move. The square doesn't breathe. Someone coughs. Someone else murmurs. She brought it on herself. Your daughter doesn't understand. She tugs your hand. What's wrong? You bend low. You smile. You lie. Nothing, my heart. Just words. But inside, you hear them echoing. Vacate, vacate, vacate. You wait by the door longer than you need to. It's early, barely dawn. The sky hasn't decided yet whether to brighten or fade again. Mist clings to the soil like breath that refuses to rise. Your cloak is damp at the hem. Cold bites gently through the cloth, but you don't move. Inside, the fire is lit. You see its glow under the door. He made you wait. Finally, the latch clicks. The village elder opens the door halfway. His eyes flick from your face to your hands, to the space behind you, checking for witnesses. He steps aside. You enter. The house smells of smoke, meat, old sweat, and something boiled too long. Turnips, maybe. It's warm, not cozy, heavy. He doesn't offer you a seat. You stand near the hearth, your hands clasped, your shoulders low. He sits slowly, groans like he wants you to know it hurts, how much he carries. You wait. So, he says, not looking at you. The church made their list. You nod. They always do, he adds. Like seasons, like frost. Another pause. He pours himself a ladle of stew. I suppose you're here to ask for mercy. You don't answer. He slurps, wipes his mouth with the back of his hand, leans back. You have no coin, no field, no man. You nod again. You have a child. Stillness. He watches you now, really watches. You want to stay? You raise your chin. Then listen carefully. The room feels smaller now, like the beams lean in. The fire shifts. The shadows on the walls move with it, long and lean and sharp. There's work, he says, not on the ledges, not with the grain. He lets it breathe. Down at the bathhouse. You know the place. Steam rising every market day. Men stripped down to skin, laughing, cursing, spitting. Women with pails and cloths, scrubbing backs and bellies and more if coins offered. He doesn't describe it. He doesn't need to. You'd be fed, warm, kept off the list. He chews a piece of bread slowly. His teeth are yellowed and broad. And your girl could stay with the baker's wife, maybe. Help with the cleaning. You're still, he says almost gently. There's no shame in work, only in hunger. You stare at the stew. Its surface glistens. A bubble rises and pops. You want to say, why not let me weave? Bake? Wash clothes? But you know the answer. There are jobs men respect, and jobs they expect. He leans forward now. Think it over. But you already have. You don't remember walking to the door, only that your hand is on the latch again. The wood is warm. Everything else, cold. As you step out, he adds, you could be useful if you want to belong. And in that moment, it's clear. You don't. You pack slowly, not from doubt, but because there is nothing more to delay. A small sack, once used for barley, now holds your life. 5 worn cloths, a lump of cured fat wrapped in linen, the wooden comb your mother gave you, and the little iron cross you found the day your first child was born. It rattles softly when you move the bag. Your fingers smell of ash and tallow. Outside the wind is calm, but the walls creak, the way old bones do before rain. You sit by the hearth. The coals are low now, glowing like quiet hearts. Your daughter is beside you, awake. She hasn't spoken since you returned from the elder's house, but her eyes haven't left you. She watches the way you fold things, the way your hands hesitate over a scarf that once belonged to her father, the way you pause before placing the cross on top, as if it still weighs more than metal. You don't cry, not because there's no sorrow, but because the sorrow has settled in your ribs, too deep to move. She leans into your side. Her breath is warm. Her fingers find yours. You squeeze gently, not as comfort, as promise. The fire pops. She whispers, "Are we going to the woods?" You nod once. "And will we be cold?" "Maybe." "And hungry?" "Sometimes." She thinks for a moment, then says, "But not alone." That's enough, for both of you. You stare into the embers. You think about what you'll leave, the clay bowl with its chipped rim, the bench that creaks in one corner, the rag rug woven from old skirts, the smell of bread on feast days, the feel of bare feet on dirt when summer comes. You don't know if anyone will take this house, or if the rats will inherit it, but you won't be here to see. The wind rises, just a little, brushes the shutters like fingers testing a wound. Then a sound. The door. It moves. Slow, careful. You didn't hear footsteps, but you hear the hinge now. It groans, and someone steps inside, without asking. You remember the way she held the pouch. It wasn't fear that made her hand shake. It was age, and the memory of being young once. The hut was warm that day, not from fire, but from steam. Bundles of dried leaves hung from every rafter, some still green at the center, others grey as ash. The smell was sharp and soft at once, mugwort, tansy, pennyroyal. She didn't ask your name, only said, "Lie down your pride. It'll get in the way." You did, because what you needed was stronger than shame. She sat beside you, placed the pouch in your palm, a little cloth tied with hair, yours or hers. You didn't ask. She said, Boil it with water. Not too long. Bitter's the point. Sip slow. Pray faster. You did. That night you felt it. The heat in your belly. The tightness. Then release. The knowing. And the silence that followed. In your body. In your breath. No one must ever know. Not the women who share fire at the wash. Not the priest who asks too many questions. Not even your daughter. Not yet. Because knowledge burns. Not like fire, but like light behind a curtain. Too much of it, and they call you unclean. You remember what they did to Algebeta, the midwife with the crooked eye. They said she turned milk sour, that she cursed a child with fevers, that she knew too much of what was inside a woman. They shaved her head, hung a bell around her neck, banished her across the river. But you remember how she touched a swollen foot and made the pain leave, how she stitched a wound with sinew and salt, humming under her breath, how she looked you in the eye when your voice trembled and said, "You're not wrong. You're just not wanted." You clutch the pouch now, not the same one, but a new one, hidden in your sack. You ask the old woman again. She didn't smile. She only said, "You're still in the world. That's enough." You wonder how long that will last, because the more you learn of yourself, the more dangerous you become. And in this world, a woman who understands her own body is a threat, not to God, but to men who speak for him. You kneel by the stream before the sun rises. The world is still grey, not with mist, but with the colour of waiting. Trees hold their breath. Leaves do not stir. Even the birds seem reluctant to break the silence. You dip the cloth in the water. It bites, not gently, not cruelly, just enough to remind you that you still live. You bring it to your cheek. The bruise there is dull now, fading into shadow, but the ache blooms when touched. A quiet protest, a memory without words. You wipe slowly. The dirt lifts, but not all of it. There are streaks that remain, like shadows clinging to bone. You scrub harder. The cloth scratches. Your skin flushes pink, but nothing changes. You look down. The water ripples. For a moment, you catch your own face. Blurred, pale, eyes rimmed in ash, hair tangled like old thread, lips split, not from cold, but from biting them too long. You don't recognize her, not fully. She looks like someone you met once in a dream. Someone who used to sing when she carried water. Someone who laughed once, just once, in the rain. You splash again. This time, the cold climbs into your chest. It settles there. You close your eyes, for a breath, maybe two, and then a sound. Not footsteps, just breathe. Close. A pause. Then your name. Spoken low, familiar, careful. Behind you, you leave before the sky turns, before it even hints at dawn. There is no farewell, no door to close, no light to snuff. Only a pause, one breath. And then your foot crosses the threshold for the last time. The earth is cold, wet in places where mist has kissed the ground. Your soles grip mud and moss alike. Each step is slow, deliberate. Not from fear, from weight. On your back, the bundle. Inside, your daughter sleeps. Her breath presses against your shoulder in small clouds. The sling bites. The cloth was never meant to carry this long. Your collarbone aches. Your hips burn. But you walk. You pass the edge of the village. No dogs bark. No lanterns sway. The world behind you does not stir, as if it has already forgotten you. Or perhaps it was never truly yours to begin with. Your path is narrow, a cart rut carved between hedges. Stones glisten faintly in the dark. You recognize none of them, though you've walked this way in other seasons, in other lives. Now it is different. Now you do not look back. The trees arch above like ribs, hollowed, dark. Occasionally, a breeze sighs through their teeth. A sound, not quite music, not quite warning. The child stirs. You adjust your grip. Whisper nothing. Ahead, the world is silence. But in that silence, a possibility, a new name, a borrowed roof, a fire built by your own hands. No gossips, no watchers, no men with rules written in your blood. Only walking, only breathing, and the sound of your steps stitching distance into safety. The road curves slightly left. You follow, and for the first time in years, you are not fleeing. You are choosing. You reach the gates as the light begins to shift from ash to honey. The road behind you is quiet now, swallowed by fog and frost. Ahead, the silhouette of walls, tall and still, a sleeping beast of stone. You step slower as the city rises in full. Towers peer down like watching eyes. The wood of the gate is blackened from age, banded with iron, scratched, worn, enormous. You've never seen anything this high that wasn't the sky. The guards are barely awake. One leans on a halberd, yawning. Another pokes at a pot of coals with a stick, trying to coax warmth. Their cloaks bear a faded crest, some noble family with too many vows and no memory of you. You stop a dozen paces short. You tighten the wrap over your daughter's body. She hasn't moved for an hour. Her face is cold against your chest, but her breath still rises. You murmur her name, just to be sure. She twitches. The stench of the city is already leaking through the stone. Soot, manure, wine, boiled cabbage. 1,000 bodies sharing one narrow space. And still, you step forward. Because behind you, there's nothing. Just hunger in a different shape. The first guard raises a hand. He squints, then waves vaguely. No entry till market opens. You nod. I'm not here to trade. He frowns. Where's your master? You blink. You know the word, but not like this. Not like a chain tossed around your throat. I've none, you say, your voice thinner than you hoped. Now he looks at you properly, sees your boots, caked in frost, your hands, raw, your bundle, still breathing, and his mouth tightens. No lone women. Law's the law. He jerks his chin to the side. Try the abbey, or the gallows, whatever suits. You don't move, because behind him, past the shadow of the wall, there are roofs, bread, possibly work, possibly mercy. You feel it calling through the stone, that ache of maybe. Another guard joins. This one's younger, red hair under his cap. He eyes you too long, smirks. Maybe there's a way, he says. You already know what's next. He leans closer, drops his voice. There's always ways in, for the right kind of thanks. He gestures behind a shed. No one else stirs. You hold your daughter tighter. Her body is warm and heavy against your ribs. You could turn. You could try another gate. But the sun is climbing now, and each breath is sharper than the last. The younger guard's eyes flick toward the shadows. So, he says, fingers tapping the handle of his belt. What's it gonna be? You cross the gate because silence is sometimes louder than permission. The guard doesn't speak, doesn't touch, just steps back and lets you pass, like watching water leak through a crack in the wall. Inevitable. Your daughter clings to you, head on your shoulder. Her breath is warm again. You press your lips to her temple, and she murmurs something soft, half dreaming, half awake. You answer with nothing. There are no words for this kind of morning. The street smells like ash and bread. A pot of stew steams behind a shuttered inn. A boy rinses buckets near a drain. A cat flicks its tail from under a cart and vanishes again. Nobody notices you, and yet they all know you don't belong. Not really. You pull your shawl tighter, feet aching, arms numb, but still, forward, because freedom here has a cost, and it's written in gestures, in customs, in glances that last too long. You don't know the rules, only that they exist, and none of them were made for you. You pass women at the well. They stop talking. One looks away. Another eyes the bundle in your arms. You're too clean to be a beggar, too tired to be a thief. You're nothing they can name. So they whisper. But this time, you keep walking. You reach a courtyard, stone underfoot, ivy clinging to walls like faded hopes. You sink onto the edge of a trough. Let the water drip from your hands, cold, real. You take a breath. Above you, church bells. Not for you. Behind you, the road, no longer yours. Ahead, smoke from chimneys, too many rooftops to count, and people who might let you wash clothes for coppers, or sweep floors, or peel roots till your fingers bleed. It's not salvation, but it's something. You close your eyes and feel your daughter stir. She's hungry, so are you, but you don't say it. Instead, you stand again. You turn toward the alleys, and you walk. Because in this world, a woman may not have safety or peace or choice, but she can have direction, and you have chosen forward.